Everything from a Mylar overlay on an air photo to field notes with squash mosquitoes. We ran into a 26-foot map the other day, grocery list from someone's field season, a resume from the 1970s. So if they did it in 1925 or 2025, it's basically the same process.
So what's your name and what do you do?
I'm Nicole Barlow, and I'm founder and CEO of Purple Rock Inc.
What's Purple Rock Inc., Nicole?
We turn hard copy archives into digital databases.
And what kind of hard copy archives are you talking about?
Anything in a banker's box, anything in a map roll, anything a mining company can produce, or something that a geological survey might have in their back room that isn't being used, so we make use of it.
And how old are these documents?
Everything going back to 150 years at this point. It's generally the history of exploration in North America is about that far, so working in North America, we have documents back about that far.
What form does this data typically come in when you find it in these banker's boxes?
Everything from a Mylar overlay on an air photo to field notes with squash mosquitoes to we ran into a 26-foot map the other day, and we digitize it all, we scan it all and go through it, make sure that it's useful. We get rid of duplicates, we get rid of things that are not useful anymore. If it's a grocery list from someone's field season or a resume from the 1970s, those things we don't need anymore. So we actually curate about half of a collection that doesn't need to be scanned, but then half of that collection could be useful in the future.
What are the possible uses of this kind of data being dredged back up and structured in a way that makes sense for, the digital 21st century economy? The
great thing about historic data in geoscience is the rocks don't change on a human timescale. So you have rocks that might have been there for millions of years, and we're looking at documents that are decades old. The data that was collected in the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, even going back to the 1900s, that data is still useful because the geology is still there. Geologists have this amazing ability to describe outcrops and describe what they're looking at really, really well. So you can go back to that data. If you're fire assaying gold samples, well, that process has been around for hundreds of years. So if they did it in 1925 or they did it in 2025, it's basically the same process. So you have all of this data that's available as commodity prices change, as now we're looking for critical minerals and we might have not before. The data that may have been overlooked in the past is useful today. You also have the piece that infrastructure has also changed. So originally they might have had to take a horse through the brush for 50 kilometers to get to the deposit, but now there might be a highway going by it. So it makes the historic data more useful and more economic to extract today than it was before. So those documents tell that story.
Anything surprise you in terms of how methods in geology, geoscience, and exploration have changed over the years?
It is interesting with the science because geology is a relatively new science. Chemistry and physics and biology have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, whereas in geology, plate tectonics wasn't well accepted until the 1970s or 1980s. So when you're going back before that, they have all of these preconceived notions of how mineral deposits formed and how geology worked. So if we take a modern approach to the historical discoveries, then you can potentially find new things.
Are there any innovations that you're currently working on or trying to do something a little bit different?
So one of the projects that we've recently finished is for Geoscience BC, and that was to compile all of the publicly available waste rock and tailings information across BC. So we did that. We used a bunch of existing data layers. We also dug into the old documents that we know so well and pulled out extra metadata information about individual disposal sites. Also georeferenced maps and found old photos to corroborate the actual polygons that we digitized in real space. So we have over 1,000 polygons that have been digitized in this geopackage that Geoscience BC released just this past Monday. So anyone can go to the Geoscience BC website and download this geopackage that has all of this aggregated information about waste rock and tailings, an informal ranking of their critical mineral potential, which is really cool. So using waste rock and tailings as a potential source for critical minerals in the future is a really interesting thing that you can do with historic data.
What do you think that next step is going to look like?
I think companies will definitely be interested, people who have claims in the area. We looked at active mines as well and abandoned mines too. I think the industry will be really interested to see what we've done with the data and what we can potentially do in the future with the same data in expanding the project beyond what we could do with this amount of time and this amount of funding from Geoscience BC.
And what's your background?
I'm a geologist.
Do you have any advice for someone who wants to get into mineral exploration or geology as a profession?
If you're doing a geology degree, there are so many possibilities. I did my geology degree and realized I'm not a field geologist. Then I did some co-op terms and realized I'm not a lab geologist, but I'm an office geologist. There's a wide variety of even lab, field, and office geologists. You could go into hydrogeology, you could go into environmental, even the financial side of the industry. So there's so many possibilities, and it depends on your own personality and what fits for you, but there's opportunities everywhere in geology, in the mining industry, and so that's a really exciting field to be in whatever form.